We understand that the situation is very difficult. According to some reports, the Russians already control almost 80% of the city. And according to the deep state resource, they keep advancing further and further in Pokrovsk. Can you tell us what the situation in Pokrovsk is like right now?
It's not that they control 80% of the city. Rather, our positions are arranged in such a way that they are present in 80%, well, less than that. Our soldiers are fighting throughout all of Pokrovsk.
Mr. Trey, today I happened to read a report stating that Russian forces have already been spotted traveling on the road leading to Mirnohrad. Is that information actually true? And the second thing I read is that even servicemen who are outside Pokrovsk, for example, in a settlement like Lysivka, they too are in a very difficult situation. Is that true?
Our enemy is using, as you know, the infiltration tactic, as we call it. They move between different positions. They go in small groups, maneuver, gather, and carry out their assigned tasks. We are resisting as much as our available forces allow us. The enemy is indeed very strong, but despite their strength, they cannot act freely or without restriction in the Pokrovsk direction.
Mr. Trey, I can see that you are very exhausted. Thank you very much for your service, but I have to ask you, we are currently raising funds for uninterrupted power supply equipment. For Pokrovsk, could you please tell us more about this need?
Uninterrupted power supply equipment is extremely important right now, especially at this moment when the enemy is striking our energy infrastructure. The significance of having such equipment cannot be overstated, as it is essential for maintaining the continuous operation of critical systems and services during these challenging times, both at small points and in terms of strategic and tactical execution. We are carefully gathering a reserve of gifts for future needs. Uninterrupted power supply equipment, not just regular supplies. The enemy destroys our equipment wherever they can. They are especially interested in targeting communications and drone operators, as they are the main strike force. Those who utilize batteries also use uninterrupted power supply devices accordingly.
Dear viewers, that's why I urge everyone, as much as you can, let's help. These uninterrupted power supply devices are very much needed by our military, so please join in. Every 10, 20 or 50 hryvnias matter. Mr. Trey, please tell us, are there still civilians left in Pokrovsk? And what is their mood, if there are still any there?
There are civilians in Pokrovsk, unfortunately. For various reasons, people do not want to leave their plots. They want to stay. There are those who believe it's too late for them to leave. But people are there, and their moods vary. There are those who strongly support us, support Ukraine, support our soldiers. And there are those who support the enemy, not openly, of course.
What is the situation with logistics now, when the enemy has almost uninterrupted fire control over many routes? Is it still possible to deliver what our soldiers need right now? As for
logistics, as you may already know, is an extremely complicated and multifaceted process. Everything related to logistics is complicated. And to be completely honest, it's difficult for us too. Because of the modern methods and constantly evolving tactics of warfare, we also have to control and monitor their logistics routes, always trying to destroy and disrupt the approaches of their manpower in order to eliminate those individuals who are directly responsible for delivering and supplying ammunition, food, water, and other essential resources, and so on. This is a continuous and challenging task that requires constant attention and effort from our side. They do the same to us. It's difficult for us. It's impossible. We're working on it.
Mr. Trey, excuse us, we're having some audio issues. It's hard to hear you, but if you can hear us, we've collected 50,000 hryvnias for the needs of the 68th Separate Jaeger Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Mr. Trey, thank you very much for your service, and thank you for taking the time to join our program. Mr. Trey, a serviceman of the 68th Separate Jaeger Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, was with us on air. Next, we will discuss the current situation at the front and the enemy's plans for the winter campaign. And we will talk about this together with Vladislav Urubkov, head of the military department of the Come Back Alive Foundation. Mr. Vladislav, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Let's start, of course, with the most difficult direction, Pokrovsk. You know, just before you, we had a serviceman from Pokrovsk on the line from the 68th Separate Jaeger Brigade. Well, you know, he was so exhausted, so tired, but you could see in his eyes that the situation there is simply dramatic. Please tell me, according to your information, considering that the Russians have thrown simply their best forces at Pokrovsk to take it at any cost, what are in general the prospects for the defense of this city based on your data? Once again.
Thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I can't say that the prospects for defending this city are optimistic. Let me explain why. Because the current situation is the result of more than a year of Russian pressure in this direction, and not a single day has passed when it became less of a priority for them. In other words, they have been applying constant pressure, and unfortunately, they managed to push through, infiltrating the city, which threatens not only Pokrovsk, but also the neighboring Mirnohrad, where we still have a significant number of our forces. Accordingly, unfortunately, throughout this war, we have seen many examples of what happens when the Russians enter a city they themselves have already destroyed. And in urban combat, their advantage in manpower is especially noticeable. And because of this, even now, when our positions may still remain in the city of Pokrovsk, even our pilots. But with more than 100 Russians already there, it is unlikely that it will be possible to completely drive them out and clear the city. I'll be honest, that's my assessment. Unfortunately, the main task now is to prevent them from developing their success to the point where they can encircle the group we have, which remains in Pokrovsk and in Mirnohrad. Accordingly, this is the key issue right now, to ensure that these units, to the greatest extent possible, end up, if not in safety, then at least not in operational or even complete encirclement.
You were just talking about this infiltration tactic, also known as infiltration, which they used in Pokrovsk. How do you think the Russians might scale up this tactic in other areas, and where is the most threatening situation right now?
Overall, the infiltration tactic is most effective precisely in populated areas, especially in cities, because cities have a lot of buildings, a lot of basements, and many places to hide. Much more so than when we talk about classic fields and tree lines, when it's just steppe. And even there, the infiltration tactic is possible, but it is especially threatening in the city because it allows the enemy to build not just one, but several routes for very small groups to enter, and then for these groups to further disperse. For me, the communication between this huge number of groups still remains a mystery. After all, we are still doing everything to destroy them, either on the approaches or directly in their hideouts. And because of this, as for the Russians who are gathering there, sometimes someone could have taken a position a month ago, or someone could have taken it just a day ago. How they maintain communication among themselves and continue these operations remains a mystery. But unfortunately, this is a very threatening strategy for us, because they are exploiting one of our main problems, our shortage of personnel, while at the same time using one of their main advantages. This is precisely their advantage in manpower, simply the sheer number of infantry. That's why it allows them to carry out such buildups. The most threatened by this, of course, these are the cities and towns that are now either near the front line or directly on it. I would probably single out Kupiansk, where fighting is already underway, and it was thanks to this tactic that they managed to enter Kupiansk. The situation is also threatening in the Lyman direction, which is also a very high priority for the enemy.
Yes, we will definitely talk more about Kupiansk. You know, many military analysts compare the operation in Pokrovsk to the operation in Kursk. And they say that the tactics the Russians used back then, when they disrupted logistics and applied their tactics in Kursk. Do you see similarities between the tactics they used in Kursk and the ones they are now using in Pokrovsk?
Yes, and this is the main consequence of the past year of the war. Because this kill zone and the impact on logistics due to increased technical capabilities, both ours and unfortunately the enemy's, their influence on our logistical routes is simply at its maximum. Accordingly, they have quite a few means at their disposal, and they can use them in many different ways. And unfortunately, they do use them in various ways. And we see that sometimes this is a direct impact, for example, when this road already from the Donetsk region side to Pokrovsk has been impassable or extremely dangerous for many months. But during this period, literally for another 10 kilometers or so, I can literally compare that in 2024, the city of Dobropilya was a fairly reliable rear hub for the defense of Pokrovsk. And literally by 2025, including due to the enemy's advance and the increase in all forms of firepower, as well as enhanced technical capabilities, it is no longer so. It is once again a city where it is extremely dangerous to stay. Accordingly, can this be compared to the Kursk region, specifically in the sense that they cut off our logistics and began to push our forces out? But at the same time, the tactic of infiltration was not as widespread back then. There, it was precisely the creation of this trap when our troops in the Kursk region were experiencing this hunger, which affected everything: ammunition, supplies, water, people who could not be brought along that single road towards Sudzha. That's why here there were more roads leading to, and remains the one that leads to Pokrovsk. Here perhaps there are more options, but still, given how much technology has advanced now, FPVs, drones, and other means of attack, unfortunately, they do not allow us to use these logistical routes, even if there is more than one.
Mr. Vladislav, you've already mentioned that the tactics the enemy is using in Pokrovsk could also be applied in Kupiansk and Lyman. And please tell us, how can we predict the enemy's plans for the winter campaign?
Unfortunately, once again, coming back to technological development, we no longer have such a concept as a winter, summer, or autumn campaign. That is, it used to be assumed, perhaps even as recently as 2022, that there would be a certain slowdown of Russian forces because they would no longer be able to use their equipment as actively. But at the same time, equipment is no longer the key factor on the battlefield. Year after year, the Russians have proven that winter is not a reason for them to stop their assaults, not a reason to avoid advancing even through tree lines, to spend the winter there, to freeze, but still to keep moving forward. So I wouldn't say we have no reason to believe that the pace of their offensive, or at least their attempts at an offensive, will decrease. Yes, the pace has slowed down, even the rate of occupation has decreased compared to the summer, but they will still try to maintain this momentum going forward. Of course, their main target is Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad, but their goal is the Donetsk region as a whole.
Thank you very much for your analysis, Mr. Vladislav. Let me remind you that our guest was Vladislav Urubkov, head of the military department at the Come Back Alive Foundation.